Laura Thompson, a waitress in rural Georgia, dreamed of opening a bakery but lost everything in a flood. A chance encounter with a customer gave her hope, leading to a community effort that helped her rebuild and achieve her dream, showing the power of resilience. Hi everyone, welcome to Life Unveiled. Let's get started. Laura Thompson stood behind the counter of a small diner in rural Georgia, wiping down the worn Formica surface for the third time that morning. At 29, she was a single woman with a dream that felt increasingly out of reach. For years, she'd worked as a waitress at Millie's Diner in the tiny town of Pinewood, serving coffee and pie to truckers, farmers, and the occasional tourist passing through on their way to Savannah. Her dream was to open a bakery, Laura's Sweet Haven, where she could share the recipes her grandmother had taught her, like pecan pie with a flaky crust and cinnamon rolls so soft they melted in your mouth. But life had a way of throwing obstacles in her path, and now, in the spring of 2023, she was staring at the wreckage of everything she'd worked for. Laura had grown up in Pinewood, a town where everyone knew each other's business, for better or worse. Her parents had passed away when she was 18. Her dad from a heart attack, her mum a year later from cancer, and Laura had been on her own ever since. She'd dropped out of community college to take care of her mum, putting her dreams on hold to pay medical bills and keep a roof over their heads. Waitressing at Millie's wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. And over the years, Laura had saved every spare dime, squirreling away $12,000 in a jar under her bed. She'd even found a small storefront to rent, a little brick building on Main Street with a cracked window but a perfect spot for a display case. She'd spent months fixing it up, painting the walls a soft yellow, buying second-hand ovens, and dreaming of the day she'd hang a sign that read, Laura's Sweet Haven. She was so close, until the flood came. In April 2023, a massive storm swept through Georgia, and Pinewood was hit hard. The river that ran through the town overflowed, turning streets into muddy torrents. Laura's rented storefront was on low ground, and within hours, the water had risen to her knees, ruining everything. Her ovens, her supplies, the wooden counter she'd sanded by hand. Worse, her small trailer home, where she'd lived since her parents passed, was destroyed, the jar of savings swept away in the floodwaters. Laura stood in the wreckage of her home, her boots squishing in the mud, her heart sinking as she realized she'd lost everything. The bakery she'd dreamed of since she was a little girl, kneading dough with her grandma on Sunday mornings, was gone. She had no insurance, no savings, and no idea how to start over. For weeks, Laura felt like she was moving through a fog. She stayed with a friend, sleeping on a couch, her clothes stuffed into a garbage bag. She kept working at the diner, which had miraculously survived the flood, but her shifts felt heavier now. The regulars noticed the change in her. Laura, who always had a smile and a kind word, was quiet, her eyes tired. "You okay, hun?" Millie, the diner's owner, asked one morning, her voice soft with concern. Laura nodded, forcing a smile, but inside she felt broken. She'd always been the one to keep going, to find a way through, but this time, the weight of her loss felt too much to bear. She'd lost her home, her dream, and the last piece of her grandmother she'd been holding on to. The recipes she'd planned to bring to life in her bakery. One rainy afternoon in May, as Laura poured coffee for a customer at the diner, a woman she'd never seen before sat down at the counter. She was in her 40s, with curly red hair and a warm smile, dressed in a raincoat and carrying a notebook. "Can I get a slice of pie and some coffee?" the woman asked, her voice bright despite the dreary weather. Laura nodded, serving her a slice of Millie's famous apple pie, the crust golden and flaky. The woman took a bite and closed her eyes, savoring it. "This is incredible," she said, looking at Laura. "Did you make this?" Laura shook her head, a small smile tugging at her lips. "No, ma'am, that's Millie's recipe, but I've got a few of my own I'd love to bake someday." The woman raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh? Tell me more." Laura hesitated, her hands fidgeting with a rag. She wasn't used to talking about her dreams, especially not now, when they felt so far away. But something about the woman's kind eyes made her open up. She told her about her bakery dream, about the recipes her grandmother had taught her, and about the flood that had taken everything. Her voice cracked as she spoke, the pain still raw, but the woman listened intently, her expression full of empathy. When Laura finished, the woman set down her fork and said, "My name's Rachel Carter. I'm a food writer, and I'm traveling through small towns looking for stories about people like you, people with heart and talent. I'd love to help you share your story." Laura blinked, unsure what to make of the offer. "I don't have much of a story anymore," she said softly. "I lost everything in the flood." Rachel shook her head, her eyes fierce. "You didn't lose your talent, Laura, or your dream. Let me write about you. Maybe it'll help you get back on your feet." Laura didn't know what to say, but she nodded, a flicker of hope stirring in her chest. Rachel spent the rest of the afternoon at the diner, asking Laura questions about her recipes, her grandmother, and her plans for the bakery. Before she left, she gave Laura her card and said, "I'll be in touch. Don't give up, okay?" 2 weeks later, Rachel's article was published in a national food magazine titled, "The Baker Who Won't Be Stopped, Laura Thompson's Fight for Her Dream." The piece was a heartfelt tribute to Laura's resilience, detailing her grandmother's recipes, the flood that took her bakery, and her quiet determination to keep going. Rachel included a link to a crowdfunding page she'd set up for Laura, encouraging readers to help her rebuild. Laura was stunned when she saw the article. Rachel had captured her story with such care, making her sound braver than she felt. But what happened next was beyond anything she could have imagined. The article went viral. People across the country were moved by Laura's story, sharing it on social media and donating to the crowdfunding campaign. Within a month, the campaign had raised $30,000, more than enough to rent a new space, buy equipment, and get Laura's sweet haven off the ground. But the support didn't stop there. The people of Pinewood, who'd read the article in the local paper, rallied around Laura in a way she'd never expected. Old Mr. Jenkins, who owned the hardware store, donated paint and tools to fix up a new storefront. The high school football team showed up on a Saturday to help her clean out the flood-damaged space she'd originally rented, their laughter filling the air as they worked. Even Millie closed the diner for a day to bake with Laura, helping her test recipes for the opening. Laura's new bakery opened in the fall of 2023, just 6 months after the flood. The storefront on Main Street was transformed. The cracked window replaced, the walls painted a soft yellow, just as she'd always dreamed. A wooden sign above the door read, "Laura's Sweet Haven," carved by a local craftsman who'd refused to take payment. On opening day, the line stretched down the block, filled with Pinewood locals and people who'd driven from Atlanta and Savannah after reading Rachel's article. Laura stood behind the counter, her apron dusted with flour, her eyes bright with tears as she handed out cinnamon rolls, pecan pies, and lemon bars. The air was filled with the scent of butter and sugar, and the sound of laughter and chatter warmed the space. Rachel came to the opening, her red hair tucked under a scarf, a proud smile on her face. "I told you not to give up," she said, pulling Laura into a hug. Laura laughed, wiping her eyes. "I wouldn't have made it without you," she said, her voice thick with gratitude. But Rachel shook her head. "You made it because of you, Laura. Your heart, your talent. That's what brought everyone here." As the day went on, Laura felt a joy she hadn't known since her grandmother was alive. She watched kids press their noses against the display case, pointing at cookies, while their parents shared stories of their own grandmother's recipes. She saw Mr. Jenkins sneak an extra cinnamon roll, winking at her as he did, and Millie beaming like a proud parent. Over the next year, Laura's Sweet Haven became a cornerstone of Pinewood. The bakery wasn't just a business. It was a place where people gathered, where stories were shared over slices of pie, where kids did their homework at the corner table while their parents sipped coffee. Laura hired 2 local teens to help her, teaching them her grandmother's recipes, passing on the love she'd been given. She started a weekly baking class for kids, showing them how to knead dough and roll out pie crusts, their giggles filling the bakery on Saturday mornings. The money from the crowdfunding campaign kept coming, and Laura used it to start a scholarship fund for Pinewood kids who wanted to go to college. her way of giving back to the town that had lifted her up. Laura's life changed in ways she never expected. She moved into a small house down the street from the bakery, with a garden where she grew flowers and herbs, the scent of lavender drifting through her windows. She reconnected with her love of baking, but more than that, she found a family in Pinewood, a community that reminded her she was never alone. Rachel kept in touch, visiting every few months, and the two became close friends, often sitting on Laura's porch with a slice of pie, talking about life and dreams. Rachel even wrote a follow-up article titled Sweet Haven, How a Small-Town Baker Built a Big Dream, which brought even more visitors to Pinewood. By the spring of 2025, Laura's Sweet Haven was thriving, and Laura herself was a different woman. She still worked hard. Baking started at 4 a.m. most days, but she did it with a lightness in her heart. She'd faced the worst life could throw at her and come out stronger, not because she was unbreakable, but because she'd let others help her stand. One evening, as she locked up the bakery, a little girl ran up to her holding a drawing of a cupcake with pink frosting. "I made this for you, Miss Laura," the girl said, her eyes wide. Laura knelt down, taking the drawing, her heart swelling. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said, hugging the girl. As she watched the girl skip back to her mum, Laura thought about her grandmother, about the flood, about Rachel, and about the town that had become her home. She'd lost everything once, but in losing, she'd found something greater, a life filled with love, purpose, and the sweetest kind of hope. Laura's story spread beyond Pinewood, inspiring others to hold on through their own storms. She became a quiet symbol of resilience, proof that even when life washes away your dreams, a single act of kindness, like a stranger's words or a community's support, can help you rebuild. Laura kept the little girl's drawing on the wall of her bakery next to a photo of her grandmother, a reminder of where she'd started and how far she'd come. Because sometimes the greatest dreams rise from the ashes of what you thought you'd lost, baked with a little courage and a lot of love.
If you enjoyed this story, drop a like and subscribe for more tales like this. Hit the bell, and we'll catch you in the next one.